ABC Kinderteach presents Dave the Potter, artist, poet, slave, written by Laban Carrick Hill, illustrated by Brian Collier. To us, it is just dirt, the ground we walk on. The ground is just dirt to us. Scoop up a handful. The gritty grains, little pieces of sand, little pieces of dirt, slip between your fingers. So when we bend down to pick up dirt, it just feels like sand almost. But I think to Dave it's something else. On wet days, heavy with rainwater, it is cool and squishy, the mud is. Mud pie heaven. It's a great time to play with mud. But to Dave, it was clay, the plain and basic stuff upon which he learned to form a life as a slave nearly 200 years ago. So there's Dave. To us, it is just a pot, round and tall, good for keeping marbles or fresh cut flowers. So to us, a pot is just for storing things. But to Dave, it was a pot large enough to store a season's grain harvest. So all the grain and seeds that he collected over a year, to put up salted meat. Sometimes people use a lot of salt on meat, like bacon, to keep it from going bad or rotting or spoiling. To hold memories. Each one began out of clouds of dust, clotted clumps, sticky handfuls of clay ground in the pug mill, a machine for mixing clay into pug, and carried wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow to Dave's spinning potter's wheel. This is a potter's wheel. It is a table that spins around and around so he can make vases and pots and other things. With a flat wooden paddle like this, large enough to row across the Atlantic, Dave mixed clay with water drawn from Big Horse Creek until wet and stiff and heavy. So clay comes sometimes from the ground depending on where you live, and you can use clay to make pots and other things. He threw the clay, sometimes 60 pounds at once, and nobody knew how or where it would land except for Dave. And they're really talking about him forming the clay, making it into something. Dave kicked his potter's wheel until it spun as fast as a carnival's wheel of fortune. And this would be like a carnival's wheel of fortune. It spins around really, really fast. What happens with him is he spins it with his feet, and then it makes the table spin around so that he can make things like this. Like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. And so as he is spinning the table, it starts to take the shape of a pot. Dave's hands, buried in the mounded mud, pulled out the shape of a jar. So he helped to form the shape of a jar by doing various things with his hands. His chapped thumbs, pinched into the center, squeezed the inside against his fingers outside. So he continues to shape the pot into the shape that he wants it to be. As the wheel spun round and round, the walls of the jar rose up like a robin's puffed breast, but only so far before its immense, or very heavy, weight threatened collapse, looked like it might fall down. So he kept forming it, and it kept getting taller and taller to the point that it was almost ready to fall over. The jar grew so large Dave could no longer wrap his strong arms around it. If he climbed into the jar and curled into a ball, he would have been embraced, held closely like a hug. So it's a pretty big pot. Only then did he stop his potter's wheel and roll long ropes of clay between his dry, caked hands. So he's making these little rolls, almost like snake-like looking rolls of clay, and he's going to put it on the top here in just a minute. Dave mounted these coils of clay one by one on the half-finished jar. So he puts these rolls of clay on the top to help form the rim. And you can see there's a roll there and there's a roll he's working with. The shoulder and rim shrugged upward as the jar took the shape Dave knew was there. And so he made this with those little rolls. Even before he worked the raw mound on his wheel. So he knew what it was going to look like because he imagined it in his head, and he just made it look like he wanted it to. While the clay dried, Dave pounded wood ash, and that's what's left over in a fire after it's gone out, and sand to mix a glass-like brown glaze to withstand time. So he's taking the pot and he's putting some almost like paint on it. But before the jar completely hardened, Dave picked up a stick and wrote to let us know that he was here. And here he is writing. I wonder where is all my relation, friendship to all and every nation.